All right, so we're going to finish out section 1.5 by talking through, and actually we're going to do an example of an economic function application. So economic functions are one of the classic applications of algebra. And what we're going to do is this comes out of economics. And it turns out that we can relate the price that people will pay to the number that is sold. So this price demand function, P of X, calculates the price per item for X items sold. So the price demand function is simply the price that you can charge to sell X number of things. The revenue function, so revenue is like the amount of money that you collect at the cash register. And that is simply the number sold multiplied by the price at which you sell each item. The cost function is your cost to produce. So it's the cost to produce X number of items. Now, C of 0 has got a special meaning. That's what you have to shell out just to get started before you even produce a single thing. It's your startup cost, right? We also want to talk about the average cost per widget. So if you make a certain number of widgets at a certain total cost, if you take that total cost and divide it by the number of widgets sold, you have, or rather the number of widgets produced, you've got the average cost per widget. Okay, now the last thing we need to think about is profit. And profit is the amount you collect at the cash register minus the amount of money you had to put in to produce the widgets. So your profit function is your revenue minus your cost. Okay, so let's do an example. And we're going to talk about these media players. The dopey media player. Whoops. Let's erase that. Okay. All right, so X is the number of dopey media players that will be produced and sold in a typical week. And we're going to suppose that the cost function is given by C of X equals 100X plus 2,000. And we think we can sell those according to this function right here. And so there's some meaning here. So let's talk first about the cost function. If I look at this cost function, before I even get started, if I'm going to produce 0 things, I still have to lay out $2,000. So that means that $2,000 is my cost up, my startup cost. And then this 100X right here, that means that for each additional thing that I produce, it costs me another $100. So the cost to produce X media players is equal to 100 times the number produced plus the initial cost of $2,000. Now, it turns out that for every additional $15 that I charge, I sell one less widget player. So if I wanted to sell, so the most I could ever sell in a given week would be 450, or would be, so it turns out if I try to price these things at $450, I sell 0. That's what this 450 says. This P of 0, price of 0. So my little p, my price function of 0 is 450. What that means is if I price my players at $450, I sell none. But P of 20 is 450 minus 15 times 20, which is 150, which means if I price my media players at $150, I'm going to sell 20 of them. Okay. Let's talk about this average cost, so this C bar of 10. That's the average cost to produce 10 players. And we remember from our definition, the C bar of 10 is equal to the cost to produce 10 divided by the number produced. So C bar of 10 is C of 10. So 100 times 10 plus 2,000, and then I'm dividing by the number produced, which is 10. So that is 1,000 plus 2,000, that's 3,000 divided by 10 is 300. So if I produce 10 widgets, 10 players in this case, my average cost for each of those first 10 is $300 each. Now, what would I price those at? This isn't the example, but let's go ahead and talk about this. If I wanted to sell all 10 of those, what could I price them at? Well, that's 450 minus 15 times 10. 450 minus 150 is 300. What would my profit be? Well, that's a different question. Let's take a look at the profit function. The profit function, remember, is the revenue function minus the cost function. Now, we haven't found the revenue function yet, so let's do that. The revenue function, remember, is the number of items sold multiplied by the price that we're going to charge for each item. So that is X times 450 minus 15x, which is 450x minus 15x squared. This is the revenue function. My profit function then is that revenue function minus the cost function, which is this 100x plus 2,000. Which means my profit function is negative 15x squared plus 350x minus 2,000. So let's go back to this 10 item example we were working on a minute ago. If I want to find what would be my profit if I made 10 players, that'd be negative 15 times 10 squared plus 350 times 10 minus 2,000. Oh, let's do that in Desmos. So, negative 15 times 10 squared, if I can do that, negative 15 times 100 plus 350 times 10 minus 2,000 is 0. That's what I thought was going to happen. So P of 10 equals 0. That means if I make and sell 10 widgets, 10 players, I make no money, but I lose no money. So 10 players is my break-even point. And you may be thinking to yourself, well, fine, I'll just charge more. If you charge more, according to the price demand function, your sales go down. And so they're at a different point in your curve. Okay, so let's wrap this up a little bit here. We've talked about all of these functions. The one thing I haven't talked about really is this last thing we found. So the break even is the number of items sold and produced and sold, where profit equals 0, which really means where revenue equals total cost. All right, these will get easier as you work through them. The things to keep in mind are what all the different functions mean, and that's included in this box right here, which is also found in your textbook on page 82. All right, I'll talk to you soon.